I can only talk about the men who were in. That was my dad and his friends, right? Those are the guys I grew up going with to spend time fishing and all that with. Yes, Hollywood thought Sam Elliott would ride off into the sunset many years ago. But in 2026, the cowboy icon is still there, just out of the way. While fame used to roar around his with his snarling voice and huge beard, quite quietly, Elliott has changed what age means to in the movies looks like. Not a single scandal, no flashy comebacks, and no desperate holding on that matter. Not even a tail-picking stillness, depth, and a life most the stars never learn how to live. You won't think that in the year 2025, Sam Elliott. Many viewers were shocked when they saw only of the most mentally stable ones, yet some of his efforts were quietly devastating. A long time working in Taylor Sheridan's Landaguy on Paramount. For decades, known as the personification of hardness in America, the deep voice, the worn-out look, the Elliott stepped into the mythical Western presence into a part that took away his bravado and instead turned toward emotional lack of sadness and the long shadow of family hurts that aren't healed. How he was shown off. TL, Billy Bob's divorced father. Thornton's personality showed a side of that felt deeply lived in rather than what was done. At the heart of TLS there is no overt violence in character or not the bad guy, but avoidance. He picked quiet over speaking out. Conflict, getting away from being open and having enough time taking responsibility, only to find out that things that were never healed don't get better with time. Dealt with. Elliott talked about in talks being honest about how this emotional family life is reflected in Stan's broken bones. Parents who are able told themselves that it's better to stay away instead of putting children in harm's way end up with more open questions than just being angry. That truth is what makes TL so scary. Trustworthiness. He's not dramatic. It has been said by Elliott that Landman does not depend on long emotional speeches to show your pain. The damage is instead hidden in gaps, in things not said, in the way that people move around everybody. This method fits in exactly what Elliott is good at as an role. His face, worn down by time and history, is carried by experience without please explain. A quick look can tell you many years of sadness. One sigh can suggest a lifetime of putting things off taking stock. In the story, Elliott uses the quiet pain of a man who knows he missed the chance to be there, and now they have to deal with the results. What makes this act so powerful, a deep connection with fans, is that it shows the emotional truth of the real world. Many people know that TL is not a work of fantasy. Character, but as a dad, a family member, or maybe even themselves, the part looks at how mental distance sometimes feel right in the moment, seen as a way to protect oneself or usefulness, but it turns out to be us giving up. Elliott has stressed that Landman is less about in the end rather than being about blame, seeing hurt without pretending it doesn't exist. Things can always be taken back, even though this job isn't based on a specific tragedy in Elliott's life. The mental weight he adds to it shows how long he's been being aware of lost themes, getting along and getting older. At this point during his work life, Elliott has become more and more reflective in talks, when talking about how much time has passed, theating up the possibilities and the truth that you can't get away with every mistake. Settlement. TL's story is shaped by that point of view. There is no emotional redemption and no simple forgiveness, but only the weak chance of being able to understand. And Elliott has said that he feels drawn to stories that don't describe what it means to be a man, be power or rule, but by the ability or lack of skill to deal with the inner truth. TL stands for a generation in Landman. Of men who were taught that being quiet meant strength. Elliott says that the tragedy, it's not that these guys didn't love each other, but that they didn't have the words to say it. This knowledge gives the person an undercurrent of kindness, even as he still has to pay for the damage his cause of absence. Some critics liked Elliott's performance for how well it held back, noting that it doesn't feel like acting and more like giving evidence. In place of asking the crowd to feel sorry for him, Elliott enables them to sit in pain with the fact that some apologies get sent late, and some links can only be some damage was fixed. Being honest makes Landman more than just a family story and turned into a musing on feelings. Being responsible. Another surprise event took place that made fans of Sam Elliott howl. In November 2018, at a time when Sam Elliott was getting claim after claim for one of the most well-known acts of his jobs in A Star Is Born, and in real life shocked everyone by reminding them of how happiness and safety can be very fragile. As Hollywood was buzzing with talk of awards and praise for Elliott's deeply felt portrayal of Bobby Maine, a completely different story was happening just outside of his front door. It was huge and a wildfire that moved quickly tore through Malibu, putting homes and jobs at risk, and lives at a scary fast rate. Elliott and Catherine Ross, his wife, were at their home in Malibu when the fire started moving forward through the area. Not like many people who left early, Elliott and the family made the tough choice to stay and protect their stuff. The air was full of smoke. The sky turned black. Scary orange clouds and the sound of helicopters and horns cut through what it should have been a calm seaside day. Geography. The fire wasn't far away. Danger. It was right away, clear, and never ending, because the fire was getting closer. Elliott and the family worked hard to keep their home. They sprayed water all the time, they did everything they could to keep coals from setting the building on fire. It was a terrifying watch, marked by weakness, fear, and the unsettling knowing that they didn't have much power at best. At one point, they looked waking up to see the house next door on fire down to the ground and burned up while theirs was right in the way. Ofloss and damage.at that time, seeing a house next door being lost in real time left a mark. It brought out how random how to stay alive during a blaze. One house stays, and another one goes away. There is no reason or justice, just chance of getting ready and the unexpected how wind and light behave. As for Elliott, who has spent their whole life playing screen is tough and durable, though without experience, there was no way to know not defeatable even though their home was eventually spared, and no one died, an emotional toll that lasted long after the fire went out. The fire wasn't just damaged property. It was against a feeling of stability that comes with settling down in one place. Malibu, long thought of as a haven for artists and dreams, it was suddenly shown the bottom is unstable, pretty, but not tolerant. What was so great about the experience? The timing was strange. And while Elliott was getting through interviews, tests, and talking about the award season, and as he thought about A Star Is Born, shocked that he almost lost his home. The contrast was strong and strange, red rugs and praise on one side, burned pain on one side and earth on the other. It was a mix of Hollywood fantasy and real life fact that not many famous people openly experience at that level of energy. Elliott has never felt sorry for Thea Battle. In later thoughts, he admitted how deeply upsetting it was to face a force that didn't care about fame, success, or standing. Wildfires don't care about jobs or passings on. They delete without unfair treatment. That moment of clarity made Elliott a viewpoint that is based on facts and not fame, but by being humble and respecting things that are bigger than any one person. Though the blaze also made Elliott's being aware of the mental weight borne by people who lose everything in such bad things. Looking at a neighbor's home burn made the destruction more real, not general. It wasn't just headlines or video from afar on the news. As someone who had lived through it, that made people scared, sad, and bring thanks into clear view at the same time. After that, Elliott came out not hurt physically, but emotionally changed. The fire made us remember that the most important events in life are often not the ones shown on the screen or marked by prizes, but those went on quietly away from the cheers. It said again that how important being there, having family, and belonging to a group, of having a root in something when everything else feels short-term. Besides that, between about 1965 and 1968 was a turning point for Sam Elliott. Loss that would change both of him life and his work goal for decades from now. At only 17 or 18 years old, he lost his dad, Henry Nelson Elliott, through a sudden heart attack. Henry, someone who works for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, passed out and died at the age 54 years old in the family's Portland, Oregon home. Sam died at home in his mother's arms. Arms on the floor in the living room. The suddenness of the moment, along with Sam's childhood, makes an emotional mark that he has never played down or forgotten. Henry Elliott stood for stability, focus, and useful being responsible. His work for the federal government showed a view of the world based on trust and realistic goals instead of hopes or risks. Even though he wasn't shown to be mean or didn't care, he was very suspicious of the fact that his son wants to be an actor. Snorts. At a time when Hollywood seemed far away, unknown and pointless to many, Henry looked at working class people acting not as a real job prospect, but as a long shot that's almost like a dream. Sam remembered that his dad used to told him he had a 1,000,000 to 1 chance in hell of doing well in the movie business. The comment wasn't just a blow off. It stood for a fundamental disagreement. What father and son talk about made up a useful and respectable life. When Henry died, that there was still debate. Just outside the door, Sam was still standing out of growth and not sure of his own abilities, and without any real victory that would prove his drive. The loss had two different meanings. On one level, it was the raw sadness of having a parent die too soon without as a warning, and in the event that did not give any time for preparation or goodbye. It was on another level the pain of unfinished business, he being aware that his father would never check out the dream he didn't believe in own day come true. In the end, in his thoughts, Elliott has been honest about the guilt he felt after his death of father. It didn't feel bad in the not a feeling of guilt, but of he knew his father didn't live long. Strong enough to see proof that his son's path had value. There was no hope for reconciliation by doing well. No time for Sam to say, I did it, and see how skeptical his dad was, turn into pride. That time away turned into a quiet but constant influence in his life, which changed the way he thought about work, approval, and sticking with it. If anything, the loss made him stronger. Made people want to do better. Elliott has claimed that his dad's lack of belief mixed with the finality of his death made him more determined. Good luck wasn't just a personal goal or aspirations of youth. It turned into a way of keeping an unfinished business in mind. In trying to make a living for himself, Elliott wasn't just after his own being happy, but also trying to describe the path he took, even if he wanted to persuade most of all that person wasn't there to see what happened. Also, back in the late 1960s, long before his voice became well known and his presence that is often associated with tough Americano be real, Sam Elliott came to Los Angeles carrying more doubt than drive. The death of his father had left a strong emotional mark, and his way moving forward didn't feel clear at all. College had given them order, boot as well as playing and direction, a dream still weak and untested. Drew him west, there are no promises, and like thousands of other young dreamers before Elliott didn't come to Hollywood as asked it to be, but as a nameless in a place that lives off of turning down. Those early years were marked Bibby an outside truth that few fully I get it. The long blocks of not doing it. Elliott has been honest. About how terrible that quiet can be for a star. It's not just there is financial volatility, but that is always there. But the wear and tear off you are when your chosen craft doesn't give any approval in return, the days blend together. There are auditions and leave. There are no rings on the phones. You start to not only your skills, but also your worth. Elliott did odd jobs to make money, anything that kept him there and paid the rent afloat while he waited for chances to come up that rarely happened in real life. The difference between the ideal idea of everything about Hollywood and its daily work was stark. There were no teachers ready to help. There were open doors, but no overnight discoveries. Making up rooms were full of men who they sounded and looked the same. Felt the same quiet desperation. Elliott was tall and had a deep voice. Unique traits that would later turn into assets. But at the time, often put him in the wrong jobs than right. It became normal to be rejected. It came in the form of a nice letdown. It came more often. As quiet. Elliott has said that it was hard not to hear no, but not hearing anything at all. That empty space forces having self-control, not having any order or reassurance. A person must give their actions a reason. Own. And for Elliott, that meant picking persistence even when common sense said get away. What made things even harder was what loss was all about emotionally. He had already lost his father. Shook up his sense of certainty, and Hollywood didn't make that better. Thanks. Elliott was in a lot of ways the hardest way to learn how to be an adult possible, through loss, money, fear, and a constant feeling of not being picked. What those years did, though, was quite important. Resilience without a bad taste. Waiting for Elliott has made him think. A lot of jobs taught him to be patient, but be humble. He learned early on that success was not something that's due. It had to be won, and even then it might go away without. Please explain. What he learned shaped his connect with fame later in life. If he finally got lucky, he would say thank you to it instead of entitlement, knowing full well how fragile it was all. During those hard times, Elliott worked on keeping rooted. He taught, watched, and learned how the industry didn't work from texts, but based on experience. He looked into people. He paid close attention to how performers moved themselves, how the directors talked, and how it was quiet when rejection happened. Respect. These thoughts turned into part of his internal schooling, which shaped the subtle reality that would later what his shows are like. He has admitted that there were times when it made sense to walk away. A lot of their friends did. Dreams fell apart under rent, time, and self-doubt. Elliott stayed, but not because he was blind. Hope, but because of something inside him refused to give up. It wasn't acting for fun. He couldn't resist the call, even when it didn't offer anything income back. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, giving Elliott prizes right away, but they may have given him something more valuable. Emotional strength. He learned how to live with doubt. Without losing who he is. That his skill would help him not only as an actor, but as a person figuring things out, a job that is hard to predict. A long time ago it was Sam Elliott's voice that became one of the most well-known sounds in movies and on TV. It was seen by many people in Hollywood see her as a risk more than a gift. In the early stages of his and while he was still fighting for footholds in a market that is often harsh business world, Elliott came across a familiar type of pressure. He had to change who he was in order to fit what someone else thinks. This is how winning should sound. Making cast agents, creators, and business leaders being part of a system that valued the story of regularity and predictability. Elliott that his gruff, thick voice was too out of the ordinary. It didn't fit the neutral tones that are smooth Hollywood chosen at the time, especially Forgis in charge. He was told to take words to help him sound better. Natural rhythm to get rid of there are regional differences and rough edges that made his voice sound like no one else's. It was clear what was meant. Change or stay outside. Just for a young actor already dealing with failure, and if there is any doubt, this kind of response could have been terrible. A lot of actors in the same roles agreed and changed to meet the requirements, expectations in the business in the hopes that making peace would open doors. Elliott knew what the temptation was. Work was not many. Approval was important. Getting by having to say yes a lot of the time. Still, something about the ask caught his attention. As being fundamentally wrong. His voice wasn't a show of emotion. It was a part of his who you are. Elliott has talked about how not wanting to fixing his voice wasn't a sign of rebellion. Not so much as an act of self-defense. It would have meant giving up if they changed it. An important fact about himself. That his voice showed where he was from and how what he said and how he listened. To get rid of it would have been to get rid of the very things about him that made him a performer. In a business that always asked the players to change how they looked, Elliott made a line that was quiet but clear. That there were effects of the choice. What roles stayed limited? Doors that were cast stayed closed. The business world was slow to understand value that goes beyond its themes to favor something smoother and more uniform sounds. Elliott agreed to pay that price. He picked I choose realism over speed, even if it meant having to wait longer stretches of not being seen funny enough. What Hollywood used to try to take away would later become Elliott's show to define strength. As a movie and TV changed over time, and as viewers leaned more toward reality than polish, his voice stood out as a sign of trustworthiness. It had weight to it, power and real-life knowledge. When Elliott spoke, it was a good thing. The sound ways it looked like someone had lived before the first line was said. When his career took off, and that voice no longer needed an explanation. It became a shorthand for honesty, strength, perseverance, and telling the truth about how you feel. The people in charge didn't ask him to change it, they used it to build figures, narrators looked for it. Ad agencies got paid thanks. The filmmakers knew that Elliott's voice did more than just give talking. It held the temperature down. The early push to fit in show narrowly Hollywood used to be described being acceptable. Elliott's decision not to follow through is a strong example of how character can stay strong in business resistance that is kept safe with waiting a strong belief. His plan didn't work out by getting more like everyone else. He achieved success by remaining clearly himself. It has occurred to Elliott that if he had heard those words early on telling him to make his sound smoother, there might still have been a career. However, it wouldn't have been his. The people in it became famous for, the audiences connect with truthfulness him and the heavy feelings he makes people feel. All of his work comes straight from that pick. The voice isn't just a trick. It's a way to get to the truth. In a business that often rewards following the rules, the journey of Elliott shows the resistance value over the long run. He didn't refuse to change in his story, but about not taking the eraser. He changed into an actor, got better at what he did, and changed thanks to chance. But he didn't give up on who he really was. He had to get there. How do you feel about Sam Elliott? Write your thoughts in the section below. We hope this is useful to you. This video is helpful. Don't forget to leave a share, like, and sign up for the stream if you like it. Thanks for enjoy this, and I'll see you next time. Videos. Thank you.